Hi, I'm Ashley Cooley, a birth, baby, and sleep specialist and mom of 3. There's so much information out there, right? This show is dedicated to helping you clear out the noise so you can figure out what will work best for your baby and your family. If you're looking to learn more about your baby, gain more confidence in your parenting, and get as much sleep as you can through it all, you've come to the right place. Bringing up baby is about to get a little easier. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bringing Up Baby podcast. My name is Ashley Cooley, and today we are talking with Dr. Madison Baile. She is a chiropractor here locally in Halifax, works a lot with the babies, and has some great information to share about tongue ties and how that goes down because, well, we've talked before, Madison, I think you do see a lot of babies or interact with clients with little ones that have tongue ties. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for coming. Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you've come to do what you do?
Yes, well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. So I'm Dr. Madison Baile. I grew up in Aurora, Ontario, but after graduating from school, I moved to Nova Scotia. So my partner is from Nova Scotia, and we decided we would move back here. So this is where we decided to start our lives.
Amazing.
So yeah, we live in Halifax now, and how I got into treating babies is I always knew I wanted to treat pregnancy, postpartum, and infants, and just didn't really know how to get into it or what I wanted to do with that. And then after just doing a lot of shadowing with experts in the field and taking a lot of courses, I realized that this is kind of what I want to do. And after taking a tongue tie specific course, I realized this is definitely a huge interest of mine. And then after working more in Halifax, I realized there's such a need for more education and more practitioners knowing about it, checking for it, and treating. So it's definitely a little niche that I love doing, treating.
Yeah, and it is a niche, and it is as a birth, baby, and sleep specialist, I hear about tongue ties quite a bit for sure, and it's definitely a concern for parents. So can we just start out with the basics, the starting point. If a parent realizes or think that their little one has a tongue tie, what are the steps that they take? Do they come to see you right away? Are they being referred to you other places? What does that look like?
So it can happen a few ways. So if they notice it in the hospital when the baby's born, then it's released right away. But it has to be if the tongue is fully restricted and if the doctor who does it is at the hospital. So it's not very likely that it's going to happen. So a lot of the times that the mom will have symptoms. So it's trouble latching or painful latching, or the baby's just really gassy or colicky or gags a lot. Those are pretty common things that they'll come in and then, or if they have a suspicion, I've heard of tongue ties, but I don't really know if the baby has one. Then they'll come in, I'll do an assessment. Likely they do have one. Then I'll refer to a lactation consultant. So I work with a few in the area, and then they'll do an assessment, and then they're the ones that make the referral to Dr. Haddad, who does the releases. So she does a laser release, which is really nice.
And she's a dentist, right? In town?
Yes. So she's a dentist. She works in Clayton Park. And she uses the laser, so it's really quick, really clean. It only takes a few seconds for the procedure to be done, and she'll check, and I'll check, and same with the lactation is, we'll check the tongue, the lip, and then buccal ties, so those are cheek ties as well. Because usually if there's one, there's multiple. But not all of them need to be released. So if the tongue and the lip are done, then usually these ones release on their own. So it's not you have to cut or release everything.
Okay.
So back to the main point is the lactation consultant will refer to Dr. Haddad, and then Dr. Haddad actually requires body work. So some sort of pediatric chiro, osteopath, physio, someone who's going to do intraoral work and body work for the baby. So it's convenient if you come to a chiro or another practitioner who checks for tongue ties and can refer to the lactation consultant because you already have that body work step done. You've kind of streamlined the process.
Right. And that body work, that happens before the release or after or both?
It is both. So kind of just like working on like retraining the tongue. Usually there's just so much tension in the body because the tongue really connects to, it's the start of all of our tissues. So usually there's a lot of like front body tension. So just working on like exercises and stretching so that, you know, the baby's kind of prepared for that when there's a release. And they have so much more range of motion, then we're training the body on how to move properly and suck properly and all that.
Interesting. You wouldn't, like, typically, I mean, I wouldn't think that a simple, I'm quoting, kind of tongue tie would have such an effect on the whole body and the whole baby.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Wow. So even though we have some podcast listeners that are not able to see that, anyone who's in the Bringing Up Baby community membership is able to watch what we're doing here. So can you kind of show us a little bit like what that tongue tie looks like? I mean, a lot of us know where to look and stuff like that, but where are the kinds of things that you're seeing it? And this is the first time I'm even hearing about the cheeks. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so under the tongue, I'll show you if this isn't too gross. Under my tongue, so I don't have a tongue tie at all, but my partner, like his tongue has the webbing. So if you look under the tongue, if you see any webbing, and it can start like just a little bit at the back, like here. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it can go all the way out to the front of the tongue. And then when the baby is like sticking out their tongue, you may see like a little, the top part of a heart, like, or even like an upside down W. So mine is rounded, but if the tongue tie, the tissue is pulling the tongue under, you'll see that indent of the tongue.
Okay. So a little bit of webbing isn't necessarily an issue. It's how far it's coming out, or is that a little bit not a good thing?
It's the function of the tongue. So a lot of people have tongue ties. I'd say most people probably do have some degree, but if the function's okay. Also the lip tie. So here, like between, I have a little one, so I actually had mine cut. I had it all the way between my teeth when I was like a school-age kid because my teeth grew in apart. So it's something that if you kind of have a few of these things, it's just easier to get it done when they're a baby because it'll save a lot of issues down the road. And also I had to get it done because my teeth grew in apart and then I needed braces because I had all this, like my lip tie all the way down.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Yeah. The cheek ones are a little harder to see. It's more like deep in the cheek as if the cheeks are still kind of restricted. It's hard to tell from the outside, but generally if these are released, these can relax.
Okay, so that's not typically a release in itself, but the other ones would help the cheeks to do that.
Yeah, I would just say this isn't as common to be released, but the tongue and the lip are usually done at the same time.
Bottom of the lip too, I guess. That could be part of it.
No,
not
the bottom of the lip.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. I like that we're all just like get our mouths right up in the camera here. So this begs the question then, because as a, well, I do promote like breastfeeding and just talk to people and encourage them and support them through however they're feeding their babies. But we know that it can majorly be a problem for breastfed babies because of the way their tongues and everything kind of comes out. So, but not always does it need to be clipped, right? Not always does it need to be worked on to like be able to breastfeed and all that stuff. So there are definitely some parents and some little ones out there that may have a tongue or lip tie, but didn't get it clipped. It didn't seem to make, so you were talking about how it's really the function of it. If it's not working, we can fix it. If it's working, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But begs the question, if, for instance, they don't clip the tongue tie or the lip tie, are there going to be necessarily issues down the road? You were just saying for yourself that you were a little bit older when you had yours done, right? So is that inevitable? Like, is there going to be something, or what do we look for as the little ones get older?
So there's a few things, like as they get older, if the babies, as an infant, if they're really gaggy, then that would be a sign that you do want to release a tongue, because then as they start getting food, like eating solid foods, then they can be a lot more gaggy, and it's just not a good experience. But even like as adults, to toddlers, when they start speaking, it can be a speech issue. So if the tongue isn't moving, they can't, roll all their sounds. It can create issues. And then in adults, we've seen adults that have like long-standing like migraines or neck pain or low back pain, and it's crazy that their tongues are tied, and it just pulls all the tension back. So you'll see like different shaped chins. You'll see different types of posture because there's so much tension and restriction that's been going on for, 10, 20, 30 years. And
interesting.
Yeah, it can
cause
lifelong things.
Well, it could, but it may not, right? Like,
it may not.
It depends. So good things to kind of think about, I guess, if there's tension, if there's that gagging, those kinds of things. So if those things are happening, and I know you primarily work with babies, so I totally get it if you're not totally sure about this answer, but if they were to not get it clipped, they don't see any issues, so then they're fine. But would they need to get it clipped when they're older or as adults, or can they work with whatever that is, that tension? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I would say I don't have a ton of experience treating like the older adults. I have one, but he chose to get the release.
Okay.
So I'm treating him I treated him like pre and post release. Mm-hmm. But I see tons of people that have back pain and like neck pain, and they're adults, and I just think it just might take a little bit more work just because you're working against tissue. But it's hard to say, like, unless you've seen them kind of from birth up. Sure. But I mean, they're doing fine. They just have, a little bit of neck or back pain. Go see a chiropractor.
Right. Okay, cool. No, I'm very curious. I know I found that the worry for tongue ties really kind of came up, I don't know, in the last 5 or 6 years, I want to say. It just gets talked about more and more. Our province of Nova Scotia used to cover the clipping of or working with those tongue tie releases and things like that, but they no longer do. And I find that really interesting. But it's great to know that there are people out there, and that it's not even just like somebody saying, oh, you have a clip, let's clip it or let's laser it. It's like they're looking at the body work, they're making sure they're working with a lactation consultant who work with families also bottle feeding, not just breastfeeding. So that's good to know as well, right? So there's more to this than just, oh, I see something, let's clip it, we're all done.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of collaborative work. Like, she won't just do it. She needs, the parents to be on top of the stretches too. Like, they have to be committed, because if you're going to go through the release and cut under the tongue and the lip, and then you don't do the exercise and it all reattaches, then why would you put the baby through that?
Oh, it could reattach.
Yes.
Ooh. So
you have to do every few hours, there's certain exercises to go under the tongue, under the lip, and make sure it's not reattaching, because the mouth heals so quickly that you really have to be diligent. And it's not fun. Like, I have to do the exercises with the baby too when they come in, and it hurts my heart a little bit because they're not comfortable. You have to be going like near the wound to make sure it's staying open. But after around the 2-week mark, like, it's a month long of healing, but around the 2-week mark, I find the scab has healed. So it's a lot easier to do the exercises.
Interesting. So guys, these podcast episodes are great and all, and I love getting the chance to share some evidence-based, practical, and non-judgmental information to help you along your parenting journey. But now there's a way to get even more. Introducing the Bringing Up Baby membership community, a place where we continue the conversation from these episodes, where you can access incredibly helpful resources like my new baby sleep guide and so many more. And it's also a place where you'll make new connections and can participate in live education sessions every week on a variety of baby-related topics. Yes, lots of them are sleep-related. Trust me, the value of this membership is like no other. To find out more and to sign up, visit birthbabysleep.ca/bbs-community, but we'll link to that in the show notes. See you there. So what could you kind of describe? You've already actually done this a little bit, but describe what an appointment with you would look like when it comes to that body work. And so are you like pulling out the tongue? You're doing stretches like with their tongue or lips or that kind of thing?
So it's a lot of like full body exercises. So kind of like helping stretch like the front of the neck or the sides of the neck. And then tongue retraining too. So there's like exercises of like, some babies just like don't want to suck. And this is whether they're tongue tied or not. Like, some babies just like have a hard time sucking on a finger. So working on like retraining the tongue muscle, because breastfeeding, well, really any babies, whether they're breastfed or bottle fed. Bottle fed, it's harder to see because the milk is let down so much easier. They don't actually have to work for the milk. Where breastfeeding, the baby has to work for it. So what you want is the tongue doing like a mermaid motion. So like this. So we want to make sure, we want to retrain the tongue to be, so you like have the finger in the mouth, kind of pull the lip down and the chin down, because we want the tongue to be doing all the sucking. Where if the babies are tongue-tied and they don't have tongue function, you'll see the cheeks are like really puckered, and there's like little air pockets here, and there's milk spilling out, or you hear like a lot of clicking, and that's when it can be very painful.
Okay. Cool. This is all really helpful. I mean, it's not cool that it's painful, but I'm very interested because having 3 kids, I feel fortunate actually that we didn't notice. I'm actually going to go look at all their mouths later because maybe they do have tongue and lip ties that I just don't even know. But it's really interesting. So Madison, I know you're not a lactation consultant and you do refer people to lactation consultants, but do you have any knowledge around if having a tongue tie affects milk supply at all, whether like before it can be released?
So actually, 1/3 of mothers stop nursing do so because of tongue ties, because it can either be painful, low supply, many different things, but it's kind of like you need that healthy balance. So the tongue tie can definitely influence milk supply, because if the baby isn't doing that like tongue motion of like pulling, like getting the letdown, then the supply can get lower. And it's really sad because they don't realize, like some moms just think like, oh, supply goes down normally at this stage, or, you know, I just don't have a lot of supply. It's like, okay, maybe that's the case, but it also could be the baby's not actually like sucking properly to get the milk to then tell your brain you need to make more milk because the baby is drinking and needs more.
Right. So it could potentially, but again, maybe not. So something to keep an eye on. Okay, cool. Can tongue ties have any effect with speech? I think you did mention this. It could potentially affect a toddler if you notice speech impediments or things in toddlerhood that could be tied to, it could be with the tongue tie, right?
Yes. So I don't see a ton of toddlers. I do kind of want to see a little more like speech language pathologists just to see if there is, like, just for my own curiosity, because in all like the books and the research, it shows that they can have speech difficulties, but I'd be very curious how many are actually directly related to a tongue tie, and then how many kids actually get a release, and then see the difference.
Yeah, that would be a good question, and a potential good podcast guest to get on here. Speech language pathology. I love that.
That is a good idea.
Right? Because you're right that they could see. I'd be curious who's coming in to see them, and for those reasons too. Absolutely.
I wonder if they're checking, because a lot of them, it's not like the tongue tie is like the cure of all the world's ills, but it's often like misdiagnosed or just not checked for. Mm-hmm. So I'd be curious.
Does anyone ever come to your clinic or look for support with that, and then you take a look and you're actually thinking like, oh, I don't think it's a tongue tie? Like, does that ever happen?
No.
It's
so common, and I don't refer everyone. Actually, well, if there's a tongue tie, I'll always refer to the lactation consultant, whether they go or not. It's their choice. I'm not going to force them. But it doesn't always mean release. Sometimes it can be, if there's a tongue tie, the lactation consultant can give them other exercises or tips or tricks that, it's within their scope and not mine. And then we can kind of work it that way. So it's not like you have to have a release. There's other things we can do, but if there's other things that pop up, then sometimes, like, there's a few things that if the baby is like gagging a lot and like through like a few weeks of exercises, if the gagging isn't getting better, then I will kind of push a little bit more for the lactation consultant and the release, because when they start solids, it could be a really big issue.
Okay.
But, yeah. Another thing is if the baby has a flat spot on the head.
Oh, yes.
So I've seen a lot of flat spot babies, so also known as plagiocephaly, and that's when the baby has a preference to one side and the back of the head starts getting flatter. And usually if they have a flat spot, they'll have some sort of like torticollis or like head to one side. And I've seen with the cases that are having a hard time getting better with the babies, or the parents just like turn them and they will not stay, is they have a tongue tie, because the tongue causes so much tension on the front of the neck. So it's easier for the baby to turn and kind of relieve some of that tension on the front. And then it just kind of like, it snowballs really quickly because they're uncomfortable like this. They turn, the head gets flat. So then anytime they go to the center, they're automatically rolling to the side.
Right. Right.
And then because they're on their side, one side of the neck gets really tight, and then it's hard for that muscle. So then we have to work on like stretching. But once I had a baby this week that got a release finally, and it's night and day the difference with less tension.
Range of motion and stuff.
Yeah, range of motion is so much better. And now we can start making big progress on the head because the baby isn't forced to be out of that tension from the front.
Yes. Absolutely. You know what? I actually screen for a lot of those things as a sleep consultant, particularly for younger infants, but even for the older crowd too. You know, do they tend to always want to go to one side? How is the feeding going? Those kinds of things, because sometimes those can impact sleep too if they're not feeding well, if they're uncomfortable.
Definitely.
So it's good. It's just really good to know that there are people like you out there, because as a childbirth educator, most people know somebody that has a baby, and most people know somebody whose baby had a tongue tie, or that breastfeeding or just getting fed or having the flat spots or the things going on. So from the prenatal side, everyone's thinking about all these things that could potentially go wrong, and who's going to find these things, and how do we fix them, and what is it all going down. So it's so nice, and I hope lots of people get to listen to this and know that chiropractors, osteopaths, like you work a lot with babies, and you're working with other people like lactation consultants, dentists, people that can help with this process. And it's like a really holistic kind of approach.
Definitely. Like, people usually don't just see me. I would say they probably see, like, I'll refer them to the lactation consultant and the dentist if needed. And if like the head is really bad, I'll also refer to like a pediatric osteopath or a pediatric physio. So just to kind of get more on board. And the goal isn't to have you like one appointment every day of the week for the next year. Like, the point of the collaborative approach is that the more people we have on board, is that then we can kind of space out, okay, you've got the head, I've got more like joint muscle restrictions, lactation consultant has feeding, and we can just spread it all out. So you're not seeing people every day. It really helps the baby improve so much quicker when you've got different people and like professions working on the baby.
Right. You're not seeing each of you like 5 times a week, but all of you combined is going to help with what baby needs to do.
Yes. Because moms are overwhelmed. Like, there's so much going on, let alone like appointments for the baby. Like, who would have thought the baby needs to go see a chiropractor? But
oh my gosh. Honestly, something that creates a lot, as somebody who lives with anxiety, what creates a lot of anxiety is having to make appointments and like making sure everybody's anyway. So I totally get that. So it's nice to know that there's lots of people that can help, but you don't have to see everybody all the time. They can all work together.
Yeah. And the parents always have the choice. Like, I'll always give them the option of like, this is who we have working that can help. But if you don't want to see them, or, you know, it's too busy, that's okay. There's other options that we can do.
Give them options. I love it. Well, Madison, could you tell us, for those who are local anyway, where are you working out of? Because I know you're in a couple of different spots. And even for those virtually, if they want to follow you, where can people find you? So
you can find me on Instagram. So Dr. Madison Baile is the handle. And then I have like a little link there. So it has both my clinic locations. And I think it also has, if not, I'll add my personal email. So that's just drmadisonbaile@gmail.com. And you can always email me, or even on Instagram. Like, if you have a question about your baby, just send a picture. But if you are an HRM, I'm at Choice Health Center in Dartmouth, and then Brickyard Holistic Health in Halifax. So
awesome. So you're nice and convenient for
HRM.
All the people across the bridges.
Yes.
Well, I'll link to your Instagram and all that stuff in the show notes too, to make it easy for people to find you. Is there anything else because you and I met before and had a chat before this, is there anything else that I missed that you wanted to make sure that we get out there? Do you feel like this was I think this was a pretty good, at least intro to the tongue tie discussion?
I would say there's two more things that would probably be good to mention. So more signs and symptoms that the parents can look out for to just get like a further like evaluation is on the baby side, if there's trouble latching. So it could be like clicking or dribbling out of the mouth. They have like a very tight or choppy latch, or if they fall off the breast easily, or if they're falling asleep at the breast because they're just kind of like hanging out, they're not actually feeding. Or if the baby
but we know that, sorry to interrupt, but we know that that happens too in just normal feeding. So it's like something to be aware of, but not necessarily an issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say there's a whole list. So I'll go through a few more. So not like if your baby only has one, like if there's a few things and you're kind of just curious. Cool. Also like excessive gas, because if the baby is sucking a lot of air in because the latch isn't great. If they're slow to gain weight, some nasal congestion, if they're sleeping with their mouth open, that's a big sign of like tension under the tongue because they're not comfortable closing the mouth. And then same with that like W or heart shape under the tongue, and then webbing. And then for the mom, if they're having pain during nursing, cracked or blistered nipples, lipstick nipples, supply issues, or even like clogged ducts or mastitis, is common because the baby's not actually able to suck and get that letdown, so they're getting clogged. Even just like a wellness exam, like I see so many babies that are, a few days, few weeks, even a few months old, just like coming in. Do we just want to make sure everything's okay? Like, yep, check all the infant reflexes, check range of motion. A lot of the time, if they're coming in for just like a wellness, then it's like, okay, great. When they start crawling, if they're not cross-crawling, bring them in. We can show the pattern and then see you again for the next motor milestone. Like it's, cool. There's wellness checks that is great.
And can be preventative too.
Yeah. I had a mom come in, the baby was 2 days old, and she was like, I had chiro care for my first kid, had a tongue tie, so we did the chiro work and didn't need a release. So we did, I think it was 5 sessions, because the baby was only 2 days old. There's not much to do. Like, it's so easy to move the tissues around. Did like mouth work, body work on the baby, didn't need a release, and was feeding great.
Nice. But it's good to get that little once over. Again, like doctors are really good and know what to look for, but they're very busy and their specialty is kind of a lot of things. So seeing people like yourself where a lot of health plans do cover, some of those costs, that it's so helpful to get like that expertise of like someone's actually looking at the whole body here and doing that preventative work. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Something else I do want to add is that so in the appointment, like we'll go over exercises, check infant reflexes, but also if there is any like joints that could be moving better, the adjustments that happen for babies. So it's not the same as adult adjustments. So there's no like cracking or popping or like crazy twisting. It's not like that at all. It's so gentle. So the adjustments are just using like one finger, and it's the amount of pressure that you would use to check the firmness of a peach. So it's so gentle. You just need to go to someone who's trained in, dealing with babies every day to know like what to check for, where to apply that small adjustment, but it's very gentle.
That's very good to know, because when I first think chiropractor, I think we're doing neck stuff. We're doing like getting in all a pretzel position, but that's not at all what it looks like for babies. Very good to know. Yes,
most babies sleep through their whole appointment, or like, usually I say the main risk is like a big poop. Usually I get like poop or barf on me sometimes, if
oh my gosh, so if you need your baby
constipated,
to poop, go
we can do some like exercises, show the moms what to do a little tummy massage, and
Beautiful. Well, good, because hey, that's a problem too sometimes. This has been such a great conversation. I'm so glad we were able to catch up and get this recorded for our members and for the podcast. We'll definitely love to have you back sometime, because I think there's always things that we can talk about. And you've given me a list of other people I'm going to connect with and maybe get out here too. Thanks so much for joining Dr. Madison Baile, and we hope you have a good day.
Thank you for having me.
Looking for more? Check out birthbabysleep.ca, where you'll find prenatal classes, postpartum and new baby resources, and sleep support during the childhood years. You'll also find me on Facebook and Instagram at birthbabysleep. It would be awesome if you followed us wherever you listen to podcasts, and if you can, leave a review or a rating, which goes a long way for helping others to find us. That's all for now. I'm Ashley Cooley, and we'll see you back here next time.